Now, 10th class students, we had studied about the reaction of decomposition. Now, the next reaction we need to do is the reaction of displacement, right? Displacement is a chemical reaction in which a more reactive element displaces or substitute a less reactive element from its compound. Note down. It is a reaction in which a more reactive element displaces a less reactive element from its compound. Now, this to take place, two, three conditions are needed. What is most important one is a metal displaces another metal, a non-metal displaces another non-metal. Have you understood it clearly? Suppose like, let's take the simplest example. When magnesium strip is introduced in the copper sulfate solution. Magnesium is a metal. Copper sulfate solution contains copper as a metal. So magnesium displaces copper from copper sulfate solution. Magnesium displaces or substitutes for copper. So one and the same. Reaction of displacement or reaction substitution are the same. You know that in when we have the real class of substitution means a teacher is absent, somebody comes in place of that person is a substitute teacher. Similarly, the copper sulfate has got copper as a metal. And that copper, instead of that copper, magnesium goes inside. That is what is substitution. And magnesium displaced copper, therefore it is a reaction of displacement. It is one and the same. Understood it? So in the NCERT book, there is an activity, this one metal activity series are given. Sodium, potassium, etc. It goes on. So what you need to do is magnesium onwards, downwards, you must learn it. Magnesium, aluminum, zinc, Fe, etc., etc. These are the ones which are being given. So what you must understand it is a more reactive element get displaces less reactive one. And how does this reaction take place? Say for example, if you put a magnesium ribbon into copper sulfate powder, copper sulfate solid, no reaction or displacement take place. So the reaction of displacement to take place, the compound must be in the form of its ion. Ion means when copper sulfate is put into water, it dissociates into copper ions plus sulfate ions. Understood it? Or even copper sulfate is heated, it melts. That molten copper sulfate also contains copper ions and sulfate ions. Have you understood it? So for the reaction of displacement to take place, one must be in the form of ion. Ions means it will be in the form of solution or in the form of water. Have you understood it? So when magnesium is put into copper sulfate solution, copper is displaced. Copper is substituted. Now, what is most important as far as this reaction is concerned? Copper sulfate is bluish in color. You know, certain metals produce colored ions. Like we have studied yesterday about ferrous sulfate, green. Now here copper sulfate is bluish in color. All copper salts are bluish in color because the color is produced by Cu2 plus ions. So we have a test tube which contains copper sulfate solution. And what is the color of that copper sulfate solution? Blue. Understood it? Into that copper sulfate solution, you introduce magnesium ribbon. Then Mg plus CuSO4 will be forming MgSO4 plus Cu. So what has taken place? The copper is displaced. Copper metal, you know that it is reddish brownish in color. So copper metal is displaced and the solution is gone into MgSO4. Right? And MgSO4, that Mg2 plus is white, so its solution is colorless. So what happens if a strip of magnesium is introduced into copper sulfate solution? For a non-science person, we can understand the color gets faded away and ultimately the solution turns colorless. And what is the chemistry behind it? The Cu2 plus ions are getting converted into copper. And copper, as you know that it's a metal which is insoluble in water. So the water has got Cu2 plus ions which gives blue color. And when that is converted into copper, the Cu2 plus color is disappearing away. So Mg plus CuSO4 aqueous, it becomes MgSO4 and Cu. That MgSO4 is in aqueous and copper metal is solid which is displaced. Understood the color changes and everything? Copper sulfate is bluish in color, magnesium metal. After some time, we see that the copper sulfate solution is faded away. It becomes colorless. And at the bottom of the test tube, one could see reddish brown copper metal. This is what is the reaction of displacement. Anything like that. Say for example, FeSO4 we have studied it, which is greenish in color. Into that you put magnesium ribbon. What happens? MgSO4 and shiny, the color of Fe is white, shiny white. So that metal is getting displaced. And what happens if Fe is put in the copper sulfate solution? Say FeSO4 is greenish in color. So the blue color solution fades away and it gets converted into light greenish in color. Why light greenish in color? FeSO4 is greenish and CuSO4 is bluish. So blue color disappears and it becomes greenish. That is what is the reaction which is taking place in reaction displacement. Have you understood it? All those metals which are above hydrogen in the activity series, there is an activity series of that is a descending order of reactivity of metals. Highly reactive to the least reactive. And that activity series has got hydrogen placed in between. You see the NCERT book, there is activity series given maybe in the metals, non-metals chapter. Understood? So what takes place? All those metals which are above hydrogen in the activity series displaces hydrogen from diluted acid. Remember, note down, all those metals which are above hydrogen in the activity series displaces hydrogen from diluted acid. And when we talk about diluted acid, means it is H2SO4 or HCl. HNO3 will study that separate. Understood it clearly? Say for example, if zinc is put into diluted H2SO4, zinc is put into diluted H2SO4, we get zinc sulfate and hydrogen. Hydrogen is displaced. That is a reaction displacement. Understood it well? When zinc is put into diluted H2SO4, we get zinc sulfate and hydrogen. Hydrogen gas is displaced. So this is what is taking place in the reaction displacement. Understood it? When aluminum is put into diluted H2SO4 or HCl, we get aluminum chloride plus hydrogen. And the previous class we have studied how do we test hydrogen. Collect the gas, put a lighted matchstick, and if it burns with the pop sound, then it is a hydrogen gas is called. So all those metals which are above hydrogen will displace hydrogen from diluted acid. Understood it clearly? And diluted acid means diluted HCl or H2SO. Understood it? Magnesium and manganese are the only two metals. Magnesium and manganese are the only two metals which displace hydrogen from diluted HNO3. No other metal displaces that. Don't ever say that aluminum plus HNO3 the reaction will take place. No reaction. Something else will be formed. Zinc plus diluted HNO3 we get some other product because HNO3 is a strong oxidizing agent. HNO3 is strong oxidizing agent. And because of the strong oxidation nature of HNO3, the product obtained is further oxidized to something else. Like if zinc is put into diluted HNO3 on heating, we get zinc nitrate. Then the hydrogen that is produced is oxidized to H2O. And HNO3 gets reduced to nitric oxide. So that will be studied in the next reaction, that is a redox or oxidation reaction. Whereas zinc plus diluted HCl, we get zinc chloride plus hydrogen. Have you understood the reaction displacement? And don't ever think that only metals are displaced. Even the non-metals also get displaced. Say for example, potassium iodide, which is you must have studied in your bio the test of starch for which potassium iodide solution is used. So potassium iodide through which we pass chlorine gas. Then what happens? Potassium chloride plus iodine. How do you proceed for the reaction? Potassium iodide is a transparent colorless solution. And through that we pass chlorine. Ki plus Cl2, it becomes KCl plus I2. Ki plus Cl2 becomes KCl plus I2. That is, iodine is displaced and iodine is purplish in color. So through that potassium iodide solution, which is transparent colorless solution, when chlorine gas is passed, immediately the solution turns purplish in color. Dark purplish in color due to the release of iodine. Similarly, potassium bromide, same type of solution, through which we pass chlorine. Then orange bromine gas is released, bromine liquid is formed. So the solution turns orangish in color. Understood it well? So metals get displaced by a metal and non-metals get displaced by a non-metal. Then you can ask me, how come magnesium has displaced hydrogen from diluted acid? Hydrogen is the only non-metal which is chemically metallic in nature. Hydrogen is the only non-metal Physical characteristic, it is non-metal, but chemical characteristic, it is a metal. Why do we say that? Because metals are electropositive. Hydrogen is also electropositive. So a more electropositive element displaces less electropositive. A more electronegative element displaces less electronegative element. Chlorine is more electronegative. Iodine is less electronegative. So chlorine displaces iodine. You understood? That is a reaction of displacement. Number of examples are given in the NCERT book. You can understand that. Whether metal get displaced by this one, non-metal. But remember, when the displacement has taken place, the product is to be identified. Hydrogen is displaced, it can be burned with the pop sound. When bromine or iodine is displaced, the color of the solution gets changed. When the metals are displaced, one can get to see the metal at the bottom, the same color. Understood? Say, for example, if orange cyanide solution is taken, gold cyanide solution is taken, 2 is to be passed copper, then we get copper cyanide and gold will be displaced. And that golden deposition will be taking place on the copper. So more reactive metal displaces. The reaction displacement does not have any activity series. Only remember, the more one can displace the metal which is below. The metal which is on top can displace the metal which are placed below. But regarding hydrogen, in the activity series, remember, hydrogen is a non-metal which is electropositive in nature. Therefore, it is placed along with the electropositive elements which are metals. So all those metals which are above hydrogen can displace hydrogen from diluted acid and below cannot. Understood? This is a reaction of displacement. You already understood it? The activities that are given in the NCERT book, you must do it. Number of activities are there. Fe is put into copper sulfate solution. Magnesium is put into FeSO4 solution. All these activities. Any example we can take it. Any example. Remember, when when Mg is put into zinc sulfate solution, similar reaction takes place. And along with that, you will be getting a question: arrange the metals in the decreasing or increasing order of activity by making them react with the salt solutions of the different metals. So, for example, you have got magnesium, Fe, copper. 3 metals are given, or in other words, they may give you that A, B, C, D are 4 metals given, and then their salt solutions are given, into which A is put, into which B is put, and which of the metals are displaced and which does not. The metal which is most reactive can displace all the metals. The metal which is less reactive, least reactive will not be able to displace anyone. That is how we made the metal activity series. Understood clearly? If A, B, C, D are 4 metals, and A has displaced all other 3 metals from the salt solution, the C has displaced only 2 from the salt solution, and D does not, something like that is given it. Which metal has displaced which all metals. So you can understand which is most reactive and which is least reactive. The one which is displacing all the metals is most reactive, and one which does not displace any metal is the least reactive. Understood it clearly? The reactions of displacement. Displacement reaction means it can be metal or it can be non-metal. Understood? Remember, an electropositive element will displace less electropositive element from its compound. An electronegative element displaces less electronegative. Clear? But remember, for the reaction displacement, it must be in the form of solution or molten. Solution or molten means it must have ions. Understood it? And then only the reaction takes place. The rest is saying you can understand. Now, it was asked once in the board examination, give the ionic equation in the form of ions. Now, how do we say that? What is the equation in the form of ions? For example, let's take it this way. Mg is put into copper sulfate solution, we get MgSO4 and Cu. This is a chemical equation. And this chemical equation needs to be converted in the form of ions. Then that means Mg plus CuSO4. CuSO4 contains Cu2 plus ions. See, in 9th class we have studied about ions. SO4 is a radical which contains 2 minus. Therefore, Cu's charge will be Cu2 plus. So, Mg plus Cu2 plus. Mg plus Cu2 plus. So, already it has got the ions. And when the product is coming, it becomes Mg2 plus and Cu. Understood it? So, instead of making the chemical equation, by chance the board asks about the ionic equation, you should know the common ions are removed. Mg plus CuSO4 becomes MgSO4 and Cu. and CuSO4 has got -2. So from here, CuSO4, SO4 is cut, then it becomes Cu2 plus, and the product side SO4 is cut, therefore Mg becomes 2 plus. Understood clearly? This is about the ionic equation. Clear reaction displacement, more reactive element displaces less reactive one, and that is about the reaction of displacement. All right. The next one comes the reaction of double displacement. Double displacement or double decomposition. It is one and the same. Double displacement or double. Normally, you know, a salt or a compound contains an ion which is negatively charged and another ion which is positively charged. What I mean to say that cations and anions. Cations are the cathode moving ions. Say for example, sodium sulfate, Na plus will go towards the cathode. Therefore, it is a cation. SO4 minus will go towards anion. Therefore, it is. Understood? So one salt is taken. In which I put another salt. Na2SO4 is taken in, and I put another aqueous solution of barium chloride. Understood? Ba2 plus and Cl minus. And when these are put, the mutual exchange of ions will be taking place. Understood? Na2SO4 plus BaCl2. All are in the form of aqueous. All are in the form of aqueous means all are got ions. That is most important. If it does not have ion, no reaction takes place. So if you take solid sodium sulfate and solid barium chloride, no reaction takes place. So what you should know? You should do sodium sulfate aqueous, barium chloride aqueous. And when these both are reacted, the reactants contain 4 ions. Na plus, SO4 2 minus, Ba2 plus, Cl minus. 4 ions. And the mutual exchange of these ions will take place, and we get BaSO4 as solid and NaCl is formed. And NaCl is aqueous and BaSO4 is solid. And that solid which is formed by the mutual exchange of the ions, and that is what is known as precipitate. Precipitate is a substance, chemical that is formed due to the chemical reaction which becomes insoluble. Remember what all the things we are taken in? We are taken sodium sulfate aqueous. And when we say aqueous means it is solution. Barium chloride, aqueous. So barium chloride aqueous, sodium sulfate aqueous. And when the products are taken in, we get sodium chloride aqueous and barium sulfate BaSO4 is insoluble, which is known as precipitate. Understood? So reaction of double displacement can be defined as a reaction in which a salt is reacted by another salt. Aqueous solution of a salt is reacted by aqueous solution of another salt. Then we get an insoluble substance which is known as precipitate and other aqueous solution. Have you understood it? So the reactants have got 4 ions. A salt is soluble in water due to ionization. If it does not ionize, that is insoluble. So you understand it? Sodium ion, chloride ion, barium ion, sulfate ion. Barium ion and sulfate ion, they don't ionize. They stay together. So they are insoluble. So reactants, we have got 4 ions, and the products, we have only 2 ions. And 2 does not ionize. And that is, it becomes precipitate. Understood it? So reaction of double displacement is also known as a precipitation reaction, in which due to the mutual exchange of ions, we get an insoluble substance which is known as precipitate. Understood it clearly? We can note on that. It is a reaction between 2 aqueous salts or 2 aqueous compound in which an insoluble substance is precipitated. Insoluble substance is formed which is known as precipitate. An insoluble substance is formed which is known as precipitate. Understood it? It's not necessary you should have only 2 salts. Let's take one more example. Aluminum chloride is a salt, aqueous, soluble in water. Caustic soda solution, NaOH, aqueous, soluble in water. When these both are reacted, what do we get? We get aluminum hydroxide is a precipitate that does not ionize. Plus, we have got sodium chloride. So that aluminum hydroxide obtained is known as precipitate. So we can say that when a salt is reacted by an alkali, What are alkalis? Which are on a soluble basis. When a salt is reacted by an alkali, and we get an insoluble base. Bases are insoluble. Plus another aqueous salt. So aluminum chloride plus sodium hydroxide, we get aluminum hydroxide plus sodium chloride. That becomes a aluminum hydroxide is a precipitate. It is also an example of precipitation reaction. Understood? When a salt is reacted by another salt, aqueous solution of a salt is reacted by aqueous solution of another salt, we get an insoluble substance that is a precipitate. So double displacement, double decomposition is precipitation. When a salt is reacted by an alkali, we get a base. Bases are insoluble. So first one, what have I told you? Salt is reacted by another salt. Aqueous solution of a salt is reacted by aqueous solution of another salt. We get an insoluble substance which is precipitate plus aqueous solution of the other salt. The next one, when an aqueous solution of a salt is reacted by aqueous solution of alkali, we get a base, and that bases are insoluble plus aqueous solution salt. This is also an example of reaction double displacement. All right. Now you know that alkalis are sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, ammonium. A few alkalis are the rest all are bases. So any example you can take it. Say for example, copper sulfate solution, aqueous, sodium hydroxide aqueous, mutual exchange of ions. What do we get? Copper hydroxide base plus sodium. That's the reaction of double displacement. Then another one. When a salt is reacted by an acid, for example, FeS is a salt. When it is reacted by diluted H2SO4, FeS plus diluted H2SO4, what do we get? We get FeSO4 plus H2S. That H2S is released in the form of gas. Understood clearly? FeS is made to react with H2SO4 or HCl. If it is H2SO4, we get FeSO4, and then hydrogen sulfide gas is released, which has got rotting. So this is also an example of reaction double displacement. So what can we say? When a salt is reacted by another salt, when a salt is reacted by another, when a salt is reacted by an acid, then we get a salt that is aqueous and the acid which comes in the form of gas. H2O is acidic in nature. FeS is a salt, H2SO4 is acid, we get H2O is acidic plus FeSO. This is also reaction double displacement. Understood it? So we can say that when a salt is reacted by another salt, precipitate. When a salt is reacted by an alkali, we get precipitate. And when a salt is reacted by an acid, we get new acid plus new salt. And this all becomes a reaction double displacement, double decomposition. One more example, what is given in NCERT is the reaction of neutralization. Reaction of neutralization is a reaction between acid and alkali. It is a reaction between the acid and the alkali to produce salt and water. For example, NaOH plus HCl, Na plus OH minus, S plus Cl minus. The mutual exchange will take place. We get sodium chloride plus H2O. The salt and water are produced due to the mutual exchange of ions. So therefore, this reaction is also accounted for reaction of double displacement. Understood it well? So when a salt is reacted by another salt, remember aqueous solutions. When a salt is reacted by aqueous solution of alkali. When a salt is reacted by another acid, we get a new salt and new acid. And another example is that of the reaction of neutralization. Reaction of neutralization, the products are formed due to mutual exchange. That is why it is known as reaction neutralization. But we would better call that as a neutralization reaction. The reason is acids which change the color of litmus papers, bases which change the color of red to blue, acid blue to red, and when the product is formed that is neutral, that does not change the color of litmus papers. That is why it is known as a reaction of neutralization. Understood it? So that is also an example of double decomposition as what is given in the NCERT book. All right, children. Rest we'll do in the next class.